So we're on a shallow lake, relatively shallow lake today. It's kind of maxes out about 20 feet. We're in one of the main basins here, which is in that 16 or 17 foot range. We do happen to have a few fish underneath us. There we are. There we go. First one of the day. We just have an absolute pile underneath us right now. Able to use Mega Live to locate this school of fish. And there we go, right there. It's got that power switch right in the corner of the mouth, right where you want it. Just absolutely perfect. We are gonna try to let this one go because there's an absolute pile underneath us. So right above them right now, we got multiple coming up to us. There we go. Feels like a pretty nice one. There we go. Just a beautiful fish. They got that nice golden color coming out of that shallow water. He's got a kind of a cool little split tail action going on right there. Something unique. And we will send this one right back to where he came from. Shallow water, these fish release so well compared to those deeper water fish. So healthy. It's a short fight when you're in this shallow water, so these fish stay nice and healthy to be able to put them back right where they came from. Today we're on a backwoods lake up in northern Minnesota, and searching for these crappies, they can be tough to find sometimes. They school up in tight groups, and when you find them, you can catch a lot of them, but sometimes finding them is the hardest part. And one way that we like to chase them around is with your forward-facing sonar, your Mega Live, you can cover a lot of water at one time. You can drill every 100 feet and be able to scan around with that. You can cover a lot of water to your sides, behind you, in front of you. You can keep moving and moving and moving. And sometimes that's what it takes to be able to find these fish in these big roaming, right here we're sitting on big basin, maxes out about 17 feet. It's a relatively shallow lake, but the fish could be anywhere in this basin. So we like to maybe have one person bring an auger, one person bring a live imaging, and you just drill it out every 100 feet until you can find these fish. And once you find them, you can start catching them, but sometimes the hardest part's trying to find them. And with these small little lakes, some of them are even unmapped, and so you don't know what's there. And that's another part with your live imaging. You can look around, you can see, is there weeds? Do you find any hard bottom, soft bottom? Do you find any gravel, rock? And you can be able to decipher what those lakes made of even without a map, and that's a really nice part of using this live imaging. And being able to do that on these small lakes, these unmapped lakes, is super beneficial to being able to cover water, find these fish, and chase these basin crappies that we're chasing today. You can see the school is just a couple feet off to our side, and when that happens, it's best to try to stay in your one spot, wait for them to come back to you. Versus chasing them around, you can push fish around in the shallow water. They can hear your footsteps as we don't have much snow or that much ice right now, so it's critical to try to be as quiet as possible and stay in one spot as much as you can. So they're slowly moving towards us as we sat here and just patiently waited for them. And here one comes, racing up, just like that. Feels like a pretty good one. Just kind of got to baby these fish. When you have a transducer in the hole, sometimes it can be easier to take it out, but I elect to leave it in there. But that one's a pretty decent one if I can get them. And there we go. An absolutely beautiful crappie. It's got that bait perfect in the top of the mouth. So we're trying to be as patient as possible out here, waiting for them to come to us, but sometimes it's just the power that you have with forward-facing sonar is you have the power to go to them. If they're 20, 30 feet away, you can go over there, drill another hole, get right back on them and start catching fish again. And looking at these fish right now, we were just catching them, just had them here in this hole, but it looks like they're like 20, 30 feet out to right in front of us right here. And so we're gonna try to drill another hole over there and get right back on them and get back to catching fish.
Drilled right on them.
Right on them, did they stay? You see that right there? You saw that just appear. That's from the hole we just drilled right on top of those fish. And you can see it coming down right from the bottom of the ice there. That's another key part of Mega Live. You can see right where you drill, and you can see we're lined up right on the fish right there. And we're gonna go drop on them and get to catching. Try to make our way over quietly to not spook them. We'll switch right back to down mode as we were just in forward when we were looking for fish. We're gonna go back to down. We'll get that little power switch right back in there and see if we can't catch any. So sometimes you have to rotate it just to be able to find your bait. Right there, you can see my bait just dropping. We got one coming up to us. And there we go. This feels like a little nicer one. Let's see if we can guide him up the hole with this transducer, and that's a really nice one there. These fish are just so full of energy when they come up from the shallow water, and just perfect. Got that bait just pinned right in the top of its mouth. That little power switch has got, for being such a small bait, it's just a 1/16 ounce. And it's I think 1 1/4 inches long, and the weight in the nose kind of designed to be able to get like down to them quickly, but it's got a really stout hook on it that's perfect for these big crappies that when you hook them, they can fight and you don't want them to bend that hook out. And that power switch does a good job of keeping them pinned. We'll let that one go. Make sure we're all good, and we'll get that. The nice thing with this bait is you don't ever have to readjust your plastic on it like you do with a normal jigging of plastic when you're ice fishing. The plastic is always perfectly level, perfectly on the hook. You can just get right back down to them and keep catching fish. This should be about instant. Just like that, we have another one dropped right back down. There's an absolute pile of them underneath us. And we're just using this little Shimano setup right here. That's another really nice crappie there. And so we're in the shallow water, and something that's really important is your rod and reel setup. These fish are so aggressive, and sometimes they can upbite it, and it's important to have a rod you get a little bend in the end of your rod, and so you can see that slack line when they bite. That's an important feature of a rod. And what a lot of people are used to is you're fishing crappies in the middle of the winter. They're in those basins that can be 30, 35 feet deep, and by the time you hook the fish, get it up to the ice, most of those fish are pretty tired and just come right up the hole. But when you're in the shallow water, you're dealing with aggressive fish, really scrappy fish right underneath the ice. And by the time you get into the surface, you haven't had them hooked that long. And so it's important to have a good rod and reel setup to be able to fight those fish and keep them pinned when they're right underneath the ice. They're underneath the ice, they're spinning, they're twirling, they're trying to shake that hook. And being able to keep them pinned and having a good drag to do that is an important part of it. We've got one coming in here. He's slowly coming in. He sees that bait and he's just racing up for it. Pulled it right out of his mouth. And that's nice thing about this power switch is when you miss a fish just like that, you automatically don't have to reel up and change the bait. You can keep your bait down there, keep it fishing. You can get right back to catching. And all these fish came back. These fish are just so scrappy. They're a little tangled up here. We'll just set that out. Let's see if we can keep them on. And sometimes that's just part of it. You got to take your transducer out of the hole. You can get a nice fish just like that. Beautiful crappie.